Okay, so we're going to go ahead and call the Senate Committee on Revenue to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Buck, Senator Danyate. Here. Senator Severs-Ganser, Senator Spearman, Chair Neal.
Here. So please mark Senator Ganser present as she arrives, Senator Spearman present as she arrives. We are going to, clearly, we're not going to start work session. So what we're going to do is roll into the budget presentation. I need the CFO for North Las Vegas, I believe he is down south, correct? To come to the table. And are you supposed to come to the table at all, or? I mean, you don't have to. I'm not forcing you. I'll just talk to him. Okay. So, go ahead and state your name for the record, and then we will start, and we're going to work from, can you see that presentation down south?
No, not yet. We can now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right.
So you asked me to state my name. Thank you, Senator Neal. My name is William Hardy. I am the Finance Director for the City of North Las Vegas.
Thank you for that. And so the way I envisioned this hearing going is, well, this presentation is going to be a little bit shorter and quicker. So the conversation is around Fund 208, which is in the Community Development Fund that's in the North Las Vegas budgets. And if we could, Mr. Tower, turn to the next page. And so I wanted to talk about this particular budget, and you can turn the page. So in this particular budget in 2015, 2016, if you could help, if you can see the Windsor Park budgets, which are in Community Fund, the FNFA, and then the CDBG. If you could identify what is FNMA mean, and then we can start with explanations. Is your mic on?
It is now. I apologize.
Just
you asked.
state your name for the, every time you speak, you got to state your name for the record.
All right. Thank you. William Hardy.
Okay. Thank you.
I believe the question was FANA. What does that stand for? I believe it stands for Fannie Mae.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so can we talk about, so these line items related to Windsor Park? It's my understanding that the Windsor Park funds that fall into the community budget 233, 280, and 285, those are all a part either of the 1998 bond, or they are part of the federal allocation that was from the original 14 million from the federal government. Can you explain what those accounts are for?
Yes, William Hardy for the record. And funds 233 and 285 are special revenue funds dedicated to the voluntary relocation program for Windsor Park. These funds were first set up in the 1990s to assist residents with relocation costs and down payments to purchase other homes outside of Windsor Park. For fiscal year 2022 and 2023, the city has budgeted $817,000 in expenditures for these two funds in case any residents voluntarily elect to participate in the relocation programs. So far this year, we have not expended any of these funds. This line item is actually pretty simple. The majority of the funds come from the federal government with a small contribution from our state government, and then the program was administered by the city. Since 1990, the city has received and administered approximately $14.5 million in Windsor Park funds, with over 90% of that funding coming from the federal government. It has come from Fannie Mae, CDBG funds, federal special purpose grants. Additionally, the state contributed about $500,000 in the early 1990s. Currently, the funds have a balance of $2.3 million remaining to be administered by the city for relocation.
Okay, thank you for that. So I don't know if you have the presentation, so I want to start with 2015 to 2016 budget. And so that's up on the screen if you can see that. If not, you should probably have a handout down south. So when we look at the beginning fund balance under account 233, where it says 811, and then it says that there were expenses of 467,000, and then there's an ending fund balance of $344,000. What was the actual expense on related to Windsor Park in 2015, 2016 year?
William Hardy for the record. Senator, I appreciate the question. Unfortunately, those handouts were not provided down here. I can't see this on the screen, but I wasn't prepared beforehand. I haven't studied what the expenditures were in 2015 and 2016. However, because they're in the special revenue funds, they have to be dedicated to the Windsor Park. They have to follow the federal guidelines for those funds.
So can you check, because there should be handouts, I thought, on the table. We tried to make sure they were down there by 10 o'clock in the morning. So if you're only prepared for 2022 and 23?
Senator Will Hardy for the record. I'll attempt to answer any questions you have. Unfortunately, those handouts are not here in Las Vegas that I've been able to find.
Okay. So let me go to 2016, 2017. Can you change it and then try to widen this out? All right. Can you see that, Mr. Hardy?
Yes, it's small, but yes.
Okay. So in same thing, 233, there was an expenditure of 2016 to 2017 of 800. It says a beginning fund balance of 811,000, and then 467 expended, and then it has a 344,056. It looks very similar to the other budget, except for the 344,056 is different. So do you have any idea on 2016 to 2017 what money was spent on Windsor Park?
Will Hardy for the record. Thank you, Senator. I think what you're seeing is this is a budget book. So those expenditures that you see in that column are budgeted expenses, not necessarily actual expenses. So that's why if you're doing a roll forward from 2015 to 16 to 17, you're not going to see the same beginning fund balance as you would expect unless all the funds were expended in the prior year. So I understand what you're saying is that it looks very similar. What I suspect happened, and again, I haven't researched this, is that not as much was expended as was budgeted.
Okay. So let me ask one more question. Mr. Tower, can you change the page and then go to the adopted budget for 2018, 2019? And yes, right? No, go back. Where it says, can you see that dollar amount where it says that there was 2.568 and roughly $2.5 million in the Windsor Park CBDG Windsor Park Fund. Can you see that? It's at the top.
Will Hardy for the record, I believe so. It's fairly small, but yes, I see what you're referring to.
Okay. So can we now go to, Mr. Tower, can you change the page? So I don't know if we can widen that, but on the Windsor Park page, which is 2018, 2019 budget, I think that's pretty big. Maybe make it a little bit wider. So it's at the bottom. So there, it says, there's the line where it says the Light Tech, and then it has Windsor Park, and then it has a revenue of $170,000. And then it has expenses of $170,000, and then it has an ending fund balance of $303. And then for Fannie Mae, it has a beginning fund balance of $854,000 roughly, revenues of $265,000, and then expenses $1,120,000. Do you know what happened in 2018, 2019? That was expended upon the Windsor Park residents?
Will Hardy for the record. Thank you, Senator. Unfortunately, I do not. Again, I come here prepared to talk about 2022 and 2023. But again, I would reiterate that the expenses that you're seeing in that expense column are budgeted, not necessarily actual.
So, okay. So I'm sorry that, because I thought that these were put down there, and it was a PowerPoint that was printed for everyone down there, because I tried to make sure that that happened by, I thought 10 a.m., if not earlier. So I apologize for that. So what we're going to do is, because I want explanations on, you have ending fund balances that show, and even on this page for 2018 to 2019, $170,000, and then there's only $303 left in the balance. And so there's no indication of what that money was spent on. I understand what you're saying, but it's showing up in the expenditure column as a prior year, and then when you look at the future years, the balances are different. So the $1 million that's currently in 2018, 2019 does not show up in the 2019 to 2020. It actually shows up as a lower amount of money. It actually drops down to 250,000. That, and the beginning fund balance is 595, and then the in expenses were 250 with an in fund balance of $345,000. So we're going to make sure we get this to you so that you can explain where these expenses are related to the Windsor Park community. And so what I'm going to do is take that off of the screen and get my ledge assistant to immediately transfer this document to you. I thought it was down there, and so I do apologize for that, because this was not a gotcha moment. I promise you, I made sure that this was going to be down south. So with that, I really need to understand what was expended upon Windsor Park, because as you know and as you stated, what we understand is that legally the dollars were only supposed to be spent on the Windsor Park residents for relocation. And it is showing these fluctuating balances year over year where it's not clear that this money was expended on that community. Mainly because I've been in that community and done a series of cleanups, and we haven't seen any relocations or movement of homes or anyone coming in and out of the neighborhood other than the existing 90 that are there right now. And so with that, I will close that presentation, and I have all the members, but what I'm going to do, because I have the Windsor Park residents in the back, and I have a very elderly woman who is 86, I'm just going to roll into the bill hearing on the Windsor Park, the bill presentation, because it's not a hearing, it's a draft. And then I'm going to have work session, and then I'm going to do SB 400, which is the homelessness bill. Does that, everybody get the lay of the land? So I'm going to turn the gavel over to my vice chair, and then I'm going to start the bill presentation.
All right, Senator Neal, when you're ready, please begin your presentation.
Hello, I am Senator Dina Neal, representing Senate District 4. Hopefully, the residents down south, I super apologize for you guys waiting. I am going to open up this bill hearing, bill presentation, because it's not a hearing, because I only have a draft of the language for the Windsor Park residents. I want to let you guys know that the presentation was around trying to identify the dollars that the federal government had given back in the 90s to this community to relocate, because they had serious subsidence in their neighborhood. Basically, their neighborhood has been sinking, and they have been in a state where the groundwater was removed from their neighborhoods, and because they were on fault lines, it then caused subsidence of their houses, where their houses started to sink. There was a remedy proposed in the early 90s with federal dollars that involved the city of North Las Vegas going forward to, I believe Senator Reed at the time, to make sure that the issue in the 90s, 92, was going to be remedied with some form of money. It actually was the former Councilman Theron Goins Brown, well, Theron Goins, not Brown, but Theron Goins, who actually went to U.S. Congress and then was able to get $14 million. On top of that, the state had engaged in giving about $500,000 when Moose Arbery was the chair of Ways and Means. The community has still remained. There have been 90 residents. There were originally 236 residents that were there, and 90 still remain because of the 45 homes that were built by using the $14 million funds that they felt were substandard, and that wasn't what they envisioned for their lives in order to move from their existing home, although falling apart, to a new home that ultimately they felt was falling apart as well. I've been working with Boyd Law School since 2019 on this issue. We have some law students, I believe, in the audience down south who have been supporting us. I've worked with at least 4 law students, Professor Fritz and also Professor Nagai Pendel, who is now a dean at a Canada law school, but they all came together and with Boyd Law and myself, and we created a documentary to tell the story of what was happening in Windsor Park. And I'm just going to briefly play this documentary because, number one, the UNLV film students created it. Believe it or not, they won several awards. They won a Women's Festival Award. They also won a Student Emmy. It was a big deal. I believe it was 21, late end of 21, early part of 22. They were submitting all around the nation this documentary. But this documentary, I think, effectively tells the story of why I'm bringing this legislation 30 years later. Why I am pushing for a remedy from the state level and from the city in order to deal with the 90 families that we have left over. Wait, because I need the sound to be right. Everybody knew who grew up over here about Windsor Park. It just became a neighborhood that was just kind of dying out. But I just knew that if it had been another community and they had not been black, they would have fixed those houses. The fact that they've been left to just die out rather than someone stepping in to help them.
It's just not right. I'm important, we're important, we paid our fair share, we paid our taxes, and we deserve to be treated better.
Fix up Windsor Park, clean up these vacant lots that the city owns, make it look like a livable community.
I wasn't thinking about it in terms of a justice issue. I was just thinking, why do they live in this house? And it's like a dead zone.
It's a very interesting story. Windsor Park was built in the early 1960s when segregation had not ended in southern Nevada.
No one should have to live as they've lived over the past few decades, and I hope we can find a solution for them.
The residents of Windsor Park all came here for the same reasons. For a future, their future, one they could build with their own hands. Yet below all the glittering lights, revolutionary singers, and high rollers, Las Vegas was just another city in America plagued with systemic racism.
And you're talking about the 1960s? It was almost completely segregated. African Americans at the time worked in the back of the house of casinos, doing maid work, porter's work, linen rooms, that kind of work. The dirtiest jobs went to African Americans, but they were jobs.
Subpar jobs also led to subpar housing options for African Americans.
So redlining is a practice that banks and lending institutions actually draw a red line around communities in a city that they don't want to loan money into. The West Side community, and I named the community because at that time that's the only place that African Americans could actually live here in the city.
Windsor Park was one of the first all-black housing communities built on the historic west side of North Las Vegas. It was an important step in giving African Americans a place in society.
Homes are the way that you get established. It is the way you build wealth. It is the way you create community. Home ownership is the underlying stabilizing force in our country. They tell everybody to become a homeowner. That is the American way.
My name is Annie L. Walker, and I'm a resident of Windsor Park. I've been living in Windsor Park for 50 plus years.
My name is Nancy Johnson, and I'm 65 years old, and I moved here in 1976. My daughter was around 2 months old when I moved here, and I was very excited with a new home, with a new baby.
My dad was stationed at Nellis, and things were a little rough in my marriage, and so he came and got me and three of my older children, and we have been here ever since, and have multiplied since then.
Oh, the neighborhood was fantastic. It was really nice. Everybody was so friendly. We all had Easter egg hunts with all the children. They would ride up and down the street with bicycles.
Then, 20 years later, something strange happened.
It's called subsidence. The houses were built in an area where there are geological faults. So imagine the ground has cracks in it, a fault. When the groundwater is drawn out, the ground sinks, but near the faults, parts of the ground sink more than other parts. So if your house is on top or near one of those cracks, your house cracks, pipes crack, roads crack. So it became very apparent to people who lived in Windsor Park in the 1980s, and they approached the city of North Las Vegas and said, our houses are cracking, we have cracks in the road, what can you do for us?
The Department of Housing and Urban Development conducted a study and estimated that between $12 and $14 million was needed to relocate the residents. But in 1991, the money for Windsor Park was reduced from $12 million to $5 million, with officials believing that this amount, quote, would allow Windsor Park families to reestablish their living conditions to the standard that once existed in Windsor Park, unquote. As of 2021, this has not been proven true. The battle over Windsor Park stretched out over 3 phases.
I came here about 4 years ago, and I never knew nothing about them vacant lots till later. She started telling me about, well, these used to be houses.
I stayed here because I didn't want to move. This is my home. I didn't want to start all over paying a mortgage. I had a little girl. The community was just dreaming about how it used to be when we first moved here. We were all happy until they started tearing down these homes.
The feelings of the residents began to change. Feelings of neglect. Feelings of despair. But the 1991 resolution to stop them from building or repairing their homes didn't make them feel surprised in the least.
We used to go to council meetings, complain about different things, the sewage and everything else. And we're gonna fix it, you know, it's always an excuse.
The city can help us if they choose to help us. They weren't supposed to tear down the homes in the first place. They were supposed to move the people out, fix up the property, and move them back in.
We want Windsor Park to be built up like it was 40 years ago. When my fiance first moved here, like she said, Windsor Park was very nice.
You know how I come to the conclusion they said all of that to shut my mouth up. that's the way I took it, because they haven't done anything. They haven't done anything.
The situation came to a roadblock. No progress was made, and people were just sort of left in their houses, and I think they feel as if they've been abandoned.
Even after decades of unfair treatment by their government and by officials, the residents of Windsor Park continue to fight. Because a home is worth protecting.
I'm Senator Dina Neal. I grew up in North Las Vegas. I've lived in North Las Vegas my whole entire life. I got involved in politics because my dad was in politics. He was in the state senate for 32 years. And I learned about Windsor Park through him. I remember my friend that lived down the way. Their whole front of the house started to sink, and the sidewalk in front completely became cracked. If you didn't know Windsor and you came over here, you'd be like, who stays over here? And how can you even possibly live here? There's like this house, vacant lot, vacant lot, vacant lot. This house looks like it's getting ready to fall apart. How did they even get to the state and condition? And why would a government leave them in that condition? It then begs the question for you to say, well, who has the responsibility to fix it? They did. If you listen to the city of North Las Vegas, they didn't want to pay for it. They didn't want to pay to fix it. These residents were too expensive for them. And in my mind, I was just like, justice is not expensive. Because if it was somebody else, you would have done right by them, but for some reason you don't have any interest in doing right by these families. The Windsor Park residents, we were on the same page in that I really wanted to fight for them, but knowing the city and their behavior and how they just kind of responded to them, and I felt like they were disrespected, I needed someone else.
When I first met her at the law school, she had a stack of papers, I'd say about a foot high, detailing, again, the results of her research about Windsor Park. She wanted the law school to help tell the story of the residents and to see if we could find, either a legal or business remedy for them. In my perfect world, what I hope happens for the residents of Windsor Park is that we can find a developer who's interested in the commercial opportunities that are nearby. So a developer that can take advantage of an opportunity zone might also then be able to provide residential benefits for the residents in terms of either new homes or helping to rehabilitate the existing homes.
If we can lift it up in the national space and get attention, I think we can get other bedfellows to jump in this fight with us and talk about why would you leave this community in this condition for this long and not say a word.
I love my community. I love my neighbors. My prayer that night is for my whole entire Windsor Park. It was founded on good intention, and it was to help people, give them an opportunity to own their own home. So our last days could be good days, to just enjoy and not be burdened because of the city of North Las Vegas.
So thank you, committee number 1, for your indulgence. This film was literally made by UNLV film students. They did it when I was up here and we had our session, it's like literally at the end when we left session in 2019, they filmed this and walked the neighborhood and filmed the residents and did the footage in June. And then they went and they shared the story, as I mentioned, entered film festivals, got a student Emmy on this exact document. this exact documentary. And then we continued to work and meet with the constituents in Windsor Park who I directly represent and talk to them about what they needed and what they required me to do. We lost some residents during COVID. Pastor Miller was one of the residents who would go around, and when you saw all the houses, he was the one who would go around and he would reset the bricks in the other neighbors' homes that were falling down because of the subsidence. And during 2021, we lost him, and that is what continued to fuel my energy and my desire to continue to move for these residents. Anyone that has met me knows that I'm a passionate advocate for my district. I was a passionate advocate when I was on the assembly side, and I remained a passionate advocate when I started to cover Assembly District 6 and Assembly District 7 as Senate District 4 leader. And I care deeply for the plight of the folks in my district. And Miss Annie Walker, who you saw in the film, is 86 years old. She was the original resident. That church, Greater Faith, that we had in the film, her husband, Prentice Walker, there's a park right next to it. They were the ones that had the vision for this community. They had no idea that when they went and said, you know, we want to try to figure out how to build a neighborhood, that a geotechnical study should have been done to tell them that they were building homes on fault lines. They didn't know that. So when we started to remove groundwater, and at the time before we had Southern Nevada Water Authority, that is what caused that subsidence and their homes to sink. And we have stacks of minutes from the legislature, from the congressional hearings, and from the city council minutes when Theron Goins and William Robinson were all there trying to push for change right up until about 1999. And then after 1999, the last 90 stayed, and that is the condition that they currently live in today. The bill presentation, although it's a BDR, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what would be this act as it's introduced on the floor, which now this bill is proposing that the state get involved, right? When in 92, the state only put $500,000 into this issue. This particular bill, I am proposing to bring $10 million, asking for an appropriation of $10 million, and then asking the rest of the funds to come from the city of North Las Vegas. The BDR lists out how we intend to do this action, which is to work through the State Housing Division in order to move this issue and try to bring a remedy for these families. The idea was to move that census community together, because as you've noticed, they are still a community. They still call each other on the phone. They still make sure that, you know, everyone is okay. And the idea of separating them and having them scattered throughout the city, which is what was prior, what happened in the early 90s, is not the goal and not the intent. The goal is to try to make sure that the Windsor Park community that is there right now, that those neighbors still remain neighbors and that they're eligible to be moved together. Is this a big ask? Yes, it is. But they deserve it. After 30 years, I got a text from a reporter that said she had been covering the Windsor Park story for 40 years. For 40 years, she's been covering this story. And what my decision was this session was going to be the session that I brought the bill. I needed to wait until we went through the exercises of trying to find developers, of trying to work with the community and try to figure out what the solution was. And at the end of the day, they cannot continue to live in this condition. They cannot continue to reside in that state and then be allowed to where the sewage is a problem. We don't know what level of, about the lead poisoning, the asbestos, and everything that's probably still in those homes where they wanted to focus on the community and their American dream, and then their American dream got taken from them. And then they weren't allowed to continue, because how do you pass down this house to someone else? How do you pass it down? You cannot pass it down. But one thing that we found is that because that community has been left there, there have been, I don't know if they're, I would say that they are realtors that are not, don't have the best intentions, have sold these homes to Latino families who did not know that these houses were falling apart. The latest house was sold in 2019 for $350,000. And I met one of the women, a Latino woman who has a mortgage and purchased her home in 2017. And she said to me, I can't get my home insurance to fix my back wall that is falling down because it's not covered. What I know from the legislative minutes in 1989, and this was written documentation in the legislative minutes, because there's a Windsor Park person who was dedicated to help the Windsor folks relocate, said that their home insurance policies were arbitrarily canceled in 1989. They had no place to go. Their home insurance ceased to exist. And I grew up knowing this story. I hadn't even graduated from high school. And I knew my dad was here fighting for this issue. And I said, when I got elected in 2011, not knowing I was going to be the first African-American female to come into this building, that it was on my list. And so that documentation that Professor Pindell mentioned, I collected data for years until I finally said, I know I'm willing to, take on Goliaths, but this one I can't take on by myself. And I brought all that documentation to them, and I said, if you can just help me, because as strong as I am, I don't have the power to lift these 90 families by myself. I don't. I really don't. And I need you, because I am tired of the excuses. I am tired of trying to tell the story to a group of people who have forgotten these people, who don't care that they are living in this condition, and who are waiting for them to die out. And if the last thing I ever do in this legislative building is something for them, that is what I'm going to do. And that was the promise that I made to them. And I said, listen, whatever it takes, this particular elected leader will never leave you. I'm not leaving you. I'm not leaving you to wait on a remedy. And so whatever courage it takes to get into this building and ask for money, ask for $20 million from the city that you live in, well, I'm going to have enough courage to ask for it, I tell you that. I'm not leaving this building without a remedy for those families. And whatever happens in the space of that fight, I take it on squarely on my shoulders the way I've taken on everything else in my district for my people who I serve. And so I'm going to let because it's a BDR presentation, the residents have something to say. I want them to come to the table and fill in those 3 chairs because it's a BDR, you guys do not have it in Nellis. And so I want you to hear their story, and then we'll go to the work session. So all of the residents, if you could come to the table down south and fill in the 3 chairs. Go ahead and state your name for the record. And then if there's any kind of spelling, could you spell it, please?
My name is Pamela Neal.
Webster Davis.
Michael Richardson.
Thank you, guys. If you could mention or discuss any of the conditions that are currently going on with your homes or how you feel about the BDR. I know we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago and I gave you the highlights on what the bill was about, but if you could at least speak to the justice that you're seeking.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We want our houses fixed. Or we want to be accommodated with the right amount of money that my father put in his home when he bought it in 1972. We don't want the runaround. The city of North Las Vegas owned the empty lots. They don't even come clean the empty lots. There are homeless people moving trailers up there on the land that is deserted. And North Las Vegas is not doing their job. We are paying taxes. They do not fix streets. They do not fix street signs. Where is the money that was allocated for us? North Las Vegas, sir. Can you answer me that?
Excuse me, ma'am.
The money that was allocated for us. Where's the money?
Excuse me, ma'am. If we
Yes,
can,
sir.
I think you guys have your mics on, so make sure that the other mics are off, and then if you can say your name for the record as well, please.
I said it, Pamela Neal.
Thank
Mic
you.
is on. You're welcome. Sir.
And
Where's the
ma'am,
money that was allocated for
ma'am,
Sir.
if you can please keep their
Sir.
comments directed to us and not the audience, that'd be great. Thank you.
They want to talk directly to me.
Well, I've spoken to you and I've told you. Now, if you guys can come out those chairs and come to our neighborhoods, you can see it with your own eyes. You don't have to watch it on video. We don't deserve that. My father bought that home when I was 2 years old, and now I'm 53, and I live there. I have raised my children and my grandchildren currently. There is still no remedy, no relief. We pay taxes. What happened to our taxes that we're paying for to have our streets fixed? We have a park up there. It gets 115 degrees in Las Vegas in the summertime. There's no cover for the park for our children to play at that park. You guys do nothing. We have asked over and over again. We've been kind. We've been patient. The people that you moved out the neighborhood, those houses down there are sinking, or are not sinking. They're breaking apart. Can we get answers? Since I can't talk to the gentleman from North Las Vegas, you as our legislators, can you get an answer from him? I don't think he gave you any answer because she asked him over and over, where is that money? You talking about expenses. What expenses? Because North Las Vegas has done nothing to the streets, to the empty lots or anything. But if we have any trash in our yard, an old car, they send code enforcement to give us to give us tickets. Give me the ticket book, because I want to give North Las Vegas a ticket for all their empty lots that they are not maintaining to make our neighborhood look good. Can you? I'm not going to ask him that. But since you guys are up there representing us, ask him why they are not doing that. Can we find them? I'm done.
Thank you,
I can-
Senator Neal. I think you have.
Anything, please.
Thank you. Are there other co-presenters that would like to also speak as well?
My name is Michael Richardson, and that's pretty hard to go behind Pam, but this, in my opinion, that I've been here since 1968 when my mom and dad bought this house, and people like Miss Walker and my neighbor McCall, they was here when we got here. And in my opinion, the city of North Las Vegas has been giving us the runaround forever. You know, when they first realized that we had a problem over there, you know, we hired an attorney. The attorney came in and said, "This is easy. This is the city of North Las Vegas' fault," you know. But he wanted a certain amount of money, you know, to get started, and you know that we could never get together with the funding. But he said that the city of North Las Vegas, they gave the permits and everything to build these houses, so they're responsible. And like, you know, and when it comes to the money, like the $14 million, when we asked about what the money was like 10 years ago, they told us like some of the money is not traceable. What's that mean? You know, like, what's that? You know, it's supposed to be used for Windsor Park, but you're going to tell me you don't know where the money is and it ain't traceable. You know, that's just crazy to me. And like I say, you know, a solution to me would be if, you know, I feel like that they ain't going to never fix the houses over there, you know what I'm saying? You know, if they, you know, especially with the numbers we have now, when it was 200 and something, I thought maybe, but with 90, they just give us the runaround. But a possible solution would be, like I say, I would, you know, me and a lot of other people would be willing for relocation. You know, like we said, our homes are what my mom and dad left us. You know, that's our future, and that's what we want to pass down to the next generation of Richardson. But a possible solution would be relocation with equal property, you know, value. I mean, not so much property value, but the size of the homes. I mean, the lots we own. We own huge lots, and we wouldn't, you know, we would want to be relocated, but with the same amount of property that we had. Yeah, you know.
Why should we have a lien on our
Yeah, and another thing, we don't want no stipulations. When they relocate us, we don't want stipulations like, you know, you can't rent the house out. If you sell the house, the city of North Las Vegas get the first $50,000. Where you got to spend your money at. If you give your money, you got to spend it in North Las Vegas. I mean, you know, that's just too much, you know. But we would like to get relocated in a place, and we would like to stay together because we've been together for 50 years, and we are family. And otherwise, we would have been gone a long time ago. But that's what I would like to see happen, is to get relocated to a place, you know, that ain't sinking, with the same amount of property and whatever that we invested in, you know, beautifying the property, that they did that also, you know. With that, I yield to you.
Webster Davis. I've been in Winslow since '71. I have seen peoples come, peoples go. My father bought the house in the early '60s. I moved up there to help him out. He passed in '81, and I've been there, then paid the house off, tried to keep it up, and yet North Las Vegas can only find a way to condemn us, not help us. The sidewalks, if you're not careful, you will fall. The streets have more dips and bumps than one neighborhood could stand. They moved the houses out, didn't fix the land up, didn't clear it off. If y'all would come from the Carson City and walk the streets of Winslow Park, you'll shake your head, because it's not fit for your neighborhood. You wouldn't even allow that type of work going on in your neighborhood. I guarantee you, each and every one of y'all sitting there got a big, beautiful home. Y'all don't have to complain about why the weeds is growing, why the houses is leaning, why we can't get nothing fixed. But yet, North Las Vegas make promises that's not being kept. We had one lady that was supposed to be representing us, and every time it came time for her to speak, she was nowhere to be found. Right is just right. If you're going to represent us, stand up for us, fight with us and for us. Why should we have to suffer for others' mistakes? When we first tried to form a group lawsuit, they said, well, we don't know which contractor we need to sue because it was 3 or 4 of them that helped build the house. Well, start with North Las Vegas. Sue North Las Vegas that gave them the permission to build on that land. And now won't keep it up. How fair is that? Our kids can't really go outside and play because they have nowhere to play. We deserve rights. If the houses was not sinking, we probably wouldn't have no complaints. The neighborhood is ours, and we deserve so much better.
Thank you so much for your comments. We will go ahead and bring it back to Chair Neal to conclude the presentation.
So, thank you, Vice Chair Dunyate. And I want to say thank you to the residents down south because, number one, we started late, at 30 minutes late because we ran late on the floor. This bill is going to get introduced on the floor on Monday, and then there will be a formal presentation. But because it's in a BDR format, I can't take the normal support opposition for the bill. I can take the presentation from the residents that came to the table, but I now have to move to a work session on some other bills. But number one, I want to tell you this. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your comments on the record. If all the Windsor Park residents and the folks that are there to support the Windsor Park legislation, if you could stand up in the room so we can acknowledge you, that would be great. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for coming down to Grant Sawyer. I will share the BDR to you guys, and then we will continue to have the formal bill hearing because this was a presentation. I didn't want to have you guys not come because I wanted to at least get this on the record today. So with that, we're going to close out this presentation, and I will be in touch with you guys by the end of today. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dina.
Thank you so much, Senator Neal. That concludes the presentation, and we'll turn the mic over back to you when you're ready.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your indulgence. So we will go ahead and open up for our work session. And just to let you know, SB 125 is being pulled off of work session. So if you're here for SB 125, that will not be heard today in this committee. So with that, I will move to Mr. Tower, who will have a discussion on the next work session document.
Thank you, Chair Neal. Christian Tower, Fiscal Analysis Division. For the record, the work session documents are available for committee members and the public on Nellis. Senate Bill 233 revises provisions governing taxes imposed on certain heavy equipment. The bill is sponsored by Senator Canizaro and was heard on March 30th, 2023 in this committee. Senate Bill 233 provides an exemption from personal property taxes for qualified heavy equipment rental property, which is defined as machinery and equipment held in the inventory of a heavy equipment rental company or an affiliate of a heavy equipment rental company for sale or rental. The bill additionally imposes a new tax at the rate of 2% of the gross receipts from the rental of this heavy equipment, which is to be administered by the Department of Taxation. Proceeds from the tax are to be distributed to the recipients of property taxes in the taxing districts where the rental occurred. And at this point, there are no amendments that were submitted. Thank you.
Members, any questions on the work session document? Senator Ganser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought there was an amendment. I thought they presented amendment, conceptual amendment.
Thank you for that. So because the amendment is still a work in progress with the assessors, I didn't want to present an amendment that there is no agreement on. And so the idea is to allow this bill to continue to move since it does have a tax and then to get it into finance.
Okay, thank you. So given that, I'll support getting it out of committee, but not initially support the bill because we don't really know where it's going to land. I understand industry supporting it, but we don't know what the consequences are and how it affects the counties. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Senator Buck.
Ditto.
Senator Spearman.
Madam Chair, I just want to apologize. I had a bill that was up for work session, so I wasn't walking out on you.
It's fine. All right, so the motion for SB 233 is going to be to re-refer to finance without recommendation. So I have a first from Senator Danyate. I need a second. Second from Senator Spearman. Any comments on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? With that, the motion is to re-refer to finance without recommendation. Next, Mr. Tower.
Thank you, Chair. Next in work session is Senate Bill 240, which revises provisions related to the Nevada New Markets Jobs Act. The bill is sponsored by Senator Neal and was heard on March 21st in this committee. Senate Bill 240 amends the Nevada New Markets Jobs Act by requiring the Department of Business and Industry to certify an additional $200 million in qualified equity investments on or after July 1st, 2026. The additional $200 million in qualified equity investments beginning in fiscal year 2027 may be made in exchange for credits against insurance premium tax, which may be taken beginning in fiscal year 2029 under the provisions of the Nevada New Market Jobs Act. An amendment has been proposed to this bill. Conceptual amendment to Senate Bill 240 was submitted by Senator Dina Neal and is attached to this work session document. This amendment includes the following provisions. The amount of qualified equity investments in Section 2 is reduced from $200 million to $170 million. The Department of Business and Industry may begin certifying these investments on July 1st, 2023. However, no tax credits may be taken against insurance premium tax prior to July 1st, 2026. The The requirement that the department shall not certify any single qualified equity investment of $8 million is amended to allow for smaller investments. And the Department of Business and Industry is required to make a separate certification of $30 million of impact qualified equity investments, which are made to qualified active low-income community businesses as specified in the bill. In exchange for the $30 million in impact qualified equity investments, a tax credit equal to 75% of the investment is returned, which may be used as follows. For the first 3 years after the investment was made, 0%. For the 4th year after the investment was made, 30%. For the 5th year after the investment was made, 15%. For the 6th year after the investment was made, 15%, and the same for the 7th year. Senator Neal has requested that this conceptual amendment be further amended as follows. The $170 million and the $30 million in investments specified in the amendment are required to be certified by the Department of Business and Industry beginning on July 1st, 2024, rather than July 1st, 2023. For the tax credits associated with the $170 million in qualified equity investments, the applicable percentage is restored to the current percentages. So 0 for the first 2 credit allowance dates, 12% for the next 3 credit allowance dates, and 11% for the next 2 credit allowance dates. And finally, for the tax credits associated with the $30 million in impact qualified equity investments, the applicable percentage is to be changed to 0 for the first 2 credit allowance dates and 15% for the next 5 credit allowance dates. There's a special note, Senate Bill 240 was determined to be eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on April 6, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any questions on work session document SB 240? Okay, seeing no questions, I will take a motion to amend and do pass. First from Senator Spearman. Do I have a second from Senator Dignate? So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously for amend and do pass. I will assign this floor statement to me whenever it leaves finance. All right, next, Mr. Tower.
Thank you, Chenio. Sorry. Next is 278, right?
Yeah.
No, 240. 240. Right?
No, 278.
Oh, yeah, of course. 278. I apologize. I got lost in my documents. You got it. Thank you. Senate Bill 278 revises provisions governing childcare. The bill is sponsored by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs and was heard in this committee on March 30, 2023. Senate Bill 278 creates a tax credit program against the modified business tax for employers who pay money to the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services of the Department of Health and Human Services for the purposes of providing childcare assistance to certain employees. The bill defines criteria for eligibility for participation in the tax credit program for employees and the childcare provider, such as that employees must earn not more than 85% of the median household income in the state in order to be eligible, and that providers of childcare must meet certain quality standards. A maximum of $5 million in tax credits may be allocated under this program in fiscal year 2024, with annual increases of 10% per year to the maximum allocation as specified in the bill. An amendment was provided and submitted on behalf of the Children's Advocacy Alliance, which makes the following changes to sections 1 and 3 of the bill. The median household income eligibility threshold is increased from 85% to 150%. The payment by the employer must be made to a provider of childcare that is licensed or registered with a childcare licensing program established in Chapter 432 of the NRS. The assistance is expanded to include payments for dependent children who are less than 19 years old if their child has special needs. The requirement that a provider participate in the quality rating and improvement system is removed. and replaced with a requirement that the provider participates or is eligible for the child care subsidy program. The application for the credits is made to the Department of Taxation rather than to the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services, and the division is required to provide a list of child care providers that satisfy the eligibility requirements to the Department of Taxation on a quarterly basis. And finally, the amendment additionally deletes Section 6 of the bill. Senate Bill 278 was determined to be eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on March 6, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I do want to make the correction. SB 278 is actually Senator Spearman's bill. So, all right. So are there any questions on the work session document related to SB 278? No. Senator Spearman.
Thank you. I just want to have a comment, and I want to thank both parties for getting together so the bill is not schizophrenic, but they did a really good job pulling everything together, so thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I'll take a motion to amend and do pass SB 278. First from Senator Spearman, a second from Senator Donyate. All in favor? Oh, any discussion on the motion? Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Neal. I'm a yes with to reserve my right on the floor. I see this as a early childhood opportunity scholarship, really, in all fairness, and I'm always supportive of that, of our most at-risk students being able to have childcare or schooling. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So, all in favor of SB 278, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, seeing no opposition, just a reservation of the right for Senator Buck. We will now, I will assign that floor statement to Senator Spearman. Next, SB 428.
Senate Bill 428 proposes to exempt sales of diapers from sales and use taxes and analogous taxes upon approval by the voters. The bill is sponsored by Senator Flores and was heard in this committee on April 11th. Senate Bill 428 provides for the submission of a question to the voters at the November 5th, 2024 general election to determine whether the Sales and Use Tax Act of 1955 should be amended to provide an exemption for diapers between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2050. This tax exemption becomes effective only if the voters approve the amendment to the Sales and Use Tax Act of 1955 at the general election in November 2024. There are no amendments submitted to this bill.
Thank you for that. Any questions on the work session document? This is Senator Flores' bill. No? All right. I will accept a motion to do pass SB 428. So Senator Gansert is first, second, Senator Buck, and yeah, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing no opposition, SB 428 passes unanimously. I will assign that floor statement to Senator Donyate because I believe Flores will have a whole lot from Senate GA for himself. SB 429.
Thank you, Chair. Christian Tower, Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. Senate Bill 429 revises provisions governing economic development. The bill is sponsored by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs and was heard on April 6 in this committee. Senate Bill 429 establishes that certain abatements of taxes for new and expanding businesses in Nevada can only be granted by the Governor's Office of Economic Development if the applying business provides at least 12 weeks of family and medical leave at a rate of at least 55% of the regular wage of an employee who has been employed by the business for at least 90 calendar days. An amendment was submitted on behalf of Senator Flores, which is attached to this document. The amendment makes the following changes to existing provisions in the bill. The requirement to establish paid family and medical leave applies only to a business that will have 50 or more full-time employees on the payroll of the business by the 8th calendar quarter following the calendar quarter in which the abatement becomes effective. The employment period for the employee in order to become qualified for the policy is expanded from 90 days to 1 year. The policy must be established by the 8th calendar quarter following the calendar quarter in which the abatement becomes effective or whenever the business will have 50 or more full-time employees on the payroll of the business, whichever is sooner. And the policy must be established by the 8th calendar quarter following the calendar quarter in which the abatements become effective or whenever the business will have 50 or more full-time employees on the payroll of the business, whichever is sooner. The amendment adds a new requirement specifying that except as otherwise provided, if the business has a policy for paid family and medical leave for employees on its payroll in a location outside of Nevada, employees on the payroll of the business in Nevada will be eligible for the same policy provisions for paid family and medical leave or for the provisions detailed above, whichever is greater at the time an employee seeks paid family and medical leave. Thank you.
Members, any questions on the work session document? Okay, seeing no questions, I will accept a motion to amend and do pass SB 429. First from Senator Dignate, a second from Senator Spearman. Any questions on any comments on the motion? Senator Ganser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to support the bill out of committee, but I'm going to reserve my right to vote no. I like the idea of extending family medical leave to individuals, and I think there was a strong case that was made around working women. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Senator Buck.
Ditto.
All right. Okay. So all in favor of amended do pass for SB 429? Any opposed? Seeing no opposition, just 2 reservations, the SB 429 passes. So with that, I will assign that floor statement to, well, I guess Senator Spearman. Okay, so floor statement to Senator Spearman. So next, we will move to SB 430, Senator Hammond's bill.
Thank you, Chair. Christian Tower, Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. SB 430 revises provisions relating to partial refunds of property taxes to certain persons who are 55 years of age or older. The bill is sponsored by Senator Hammond and was heard in this committee on April 6th. Senate Bill 430 creates a program within the Aging and Disability Services Division of the Department of Health and Human Services to provide property tax and rental expense refunds for persons who are 55 years of age or older and who meet other eligibility criteria. A claimant under this program may receive a refund of 50% of the accrued property tax on their home, 85% of the rent paid, or $1,000, whichever is less. Senator Hammond submitted proposed amendment 3596 to Senate Bill 430, which is attached to this document. The amendment would remove the requirement for local governments to provide funding for the program and instead require that funding for the program be provided by legislative appropriation from the State General Fund. The amendment would also raise the eligibility age for a refund from the program from 55 to 66 years of age. And this bill was determined to be eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on March 30th. Thank you.
Any questions on the work session document for SB 430? Okay. Seeing no questions, I will accept a motion for amended to pass for SB 430. I have a first from Senator Dignate. Do I have a second? Senator Spearman. Any comments on the motion to amend and do pass? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing no opposition, SB 430 passes unanimously. I will assign this floor statement to Senator Hammond. Next, we have SB 444.
Christian Tower, Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. Senate Bill 444 revises provisions relating to the excise tax on live entertainment. It's sponsored by the Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development and was heard in this committee on April 6th. Senate Bill 444 expands the excise tax that applies to the admission price of certain live entertainment events to also include the resale of admission to live entertainment by a reseller other than an occasional sale. Senate Bill 444 also eliminates the exemption from live entertainment tax granted under current law to an athletic context event or exhibition conducted by a professional team based in the state if such a team is a participant in the context event or exhibition. At the hearing, Senator Neal submitted proposed amendment 3567 to Senate Bill 444, which is attached to this document. This amendment makes the following changes to the bill. The live entertainment tax rate is reduced from 9% under current law to 7.87%. And the tax would be required to be collected and remitted by persons who directly or indirectly facilitate sales and admission under certain circumstances. After the hearing, Senator Neal requested amendments to proposed amendments 3567 as follows. The tax rate is restored to 9%. The exemption from the live entertainment tax granted to an athletic context, event, or exhibition conducted by a professional sports team based in the state, if such a team is a participant in the context, event, or exhibition, is restored. Senate Bill 444 was determined to be eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on March 30th. Thank you.
Any questions on the work session document? Okay, seeing no questions on the work session document, I will accept a motion to pass SB 44 without the, with the restoration of the live entertainment exemption. Do I have a first? So moved. Senator Dignate, do I have a second? Senator Spearman, any comments on the motion? Senator Ganser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be opposing the legislation. It's still extension of the taxes. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Senator Buck, you're waiting for your ditto?
Ditto.
All right, then, ditto from Senator Buck. All right, so all in favor of moving SB 444 with resale of tickets? Aye. All opposed? All right, so we have 3, 4, and 2 against. Motion passes. We moving. Oh. It's amend and do pass for SB 444, 3, 4, 2 against, so the motion passes with the majority of the committee. So, all right, so that concludes our work session. Oh, floor assignment, I'll give it to myself. So the floor assignment, I'll give to myself if we see it. All right, so with that, that will close our work session and they'll open up for SB 400. Does everybody have that new amendment? Okay. All right. Good afternoon, Senate Committee on Revenue. I am Senator Dina Neal, here to present on SB 400. You guys all should have a conceptual amendment in Nellis. I hope it's been updated. So this is the third reiteration. So what is SB 400? This session, I wanted to have a conversation about how to try to fund homelessness services in the state of Nevada. This amendment represents an idea to try to figure out how to balance the needs between the North and the South around homelessness services and try to give a funding source that's ideally The plan was in perpetuity in order to establish the local governments to then layer on top their additional funding. We know that in the state of Nevada, we have had serious issues in our cities in regards to folks who no longer have a home or displaced. In the South, it's been overflowing onto the Strip. We have folks sitting on the sidewalk who are homeless. We have the expansion where they're now, wandering into neighborhoods and into communities. And now we need to actually work on how do we fund it and how do we make all of this make sense so that homelessness can be reduced. I don't think it can ever be eliminated, but at least reduced. So the SB 400 conceptual amendment that you guys should have, and I hope that you have, and if you tell me that you don't have this particular third version, then I'm just going to read through it. So first, section 1 of the proposed conceptual amendment basically creates a fiscal work group. So right now, we currently have the continuum of care in Nevada. So I looked at this issue because I started looking at, well, what is the continuum of care? And I realized that they didn't have a fiscal committee or fiscal work group. We already have 1 million committees in the state of Nevada. I didn't want to have to create another standing agency or group that would then be over the funds. So the idea was to create a fiscal work group within the 3 Nevada continuum of care. We have the Northern Nevada COC, the Southern Nevada Homelessness COC, and then the balance of this, the Rural Nevada COC. The idea was to create the fiscal committee so that that fiscal committee would oversee the funds. The setup of that work group would be 1 gaming member, 1 police member, 1 county member, and then the city members. So currently, right now, in rural or the South, majority of the cities are already a part of the COC. This fiscal work group would then be 7 members. There does not have a legislative member on it. Each entity within that fiscal work group would have equal vote, not allowing a proportionality, but equal vote for all the members for the 7, so they could decide how to fund homelessness programs outside of what the federal government has already established. So let me back up. We all know the most COCs, continuum of care, they mostly get federal dollars, and they've been designated already for some particular group. This particular bill would be offering money that operated outside of the COC, but within the structure of the fiscal work group, trying to reduce the bureaucracy that already exists around homelessness groups or interagency councils that are already in place. The funding that in this bill is set up so that it's not going to supplant existing federal funds already established by federal funding or grants. The idea is to allow the fiscal work group to fund and develop flexible solutions around roughly 3 entry points. 1 entry point being developing a continuum of care of services around the exit from jail. That includes sustainable interventions for medication, prescription services, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, emergency housing, and supportive housing. The second entry or exit point is to develop a continuum of care upon exit from an emergency shelter, such as the Las Vegas Corridor or Washoe County's Care Campus, for sustainable medication, prescription services, alcohol interventions, drug interventions, emergency housing, and supportive housing. For the southern part of the state, it is recommended that $9 million from the flexible funding go to the city of Las Vegas to help build out the corridor fully. It's my understanding right now, City of Las Vegas currently has general fund dollars going to the corridor, but it still needs to be fully built out in order to do what it was established to do. And so this money would be treated as additional funding on top of the base funding that they currently have in the general fund. I talked to several people about this bill. I talked to the sheriff. I talked to our folks that are over the state and interagency group and the county, and a lot of things came up about making sure that it was, I called it shared pain. Senator Ganser said maybe I should call it shared love. But there were a lot of conversation around how we move homelessness between borders. And that on the North Las Vegas side, they're pushed to the Vegas side. When they come from the Vegas side, they're pushed to the North Las Vegas side. Then there was a conversation about how even though Henderson may not have like the same level of problems that the city of Las Vegas has, or that the city of North Las Vegas has, they still have a border issue in where they connect between the Las Vegas and county border that picks up Henderson. So the bill, although this will probably come with some objection, but folks wanted to make sure that I included North Las Vegas and Henderson in sharing in some of the dollars that are associated with reducing homelessness, or at least participating as an entity. So this bill is a work in progress, but I wanted to put it in there to represent the conversations that I was having, mostly with the sheriff. The third exit is coming from where the individuals are exiting when we have to deal with the street team. So currently, Metro Police has, they're called hot teams or care teams or street teams. Everybody has a different name. But Metro Police currently already has teams that go out and interface with homeless populations. So in sub C, in the conceptual amendment, it basically says that Metro Police must continue to fund through their existing dollars for the hot team for the outreach and coordination with other care teams or street teams. Because I believe the city of Las Vegas and the county have either a care team or a street team that basically they're dispatched to go out and meet that population or interface with them and then try to figure out what services. Now, where is this money coming from? The idea was to go and use general fund of the amount of, it's a carve out of 22.5 cents from the 6.75% rate, which happens to represent our resort corridor, which is $30 million. It's not a tax increase. The revenue would be used for the homeless populations who are exiting in acute care settings, emergency rooms, psychiatric hospitals, detox facilities, safe havens, transitional housing, and then all on top of that to try to make sure that there is sustainable prescription services, medication, alcohol, drug intervention, and supportive housing. I'm going to simplify this. The thought pattern was this. We know that they exit, but we can't keep them stable. We need to figure out how we're going to do that wraparound care in order to sustain the population while we either get them off of drugs, get them mentally stable, on medication system, and also how we get them either clean from alcohol. We know that there's a lot of work going on. The question is, where is the additional funding in order to make it all make sense? If there's not enough money in order to build the continuum outside of what the federal dollars are, then we're just going to keep spinning our wheels. I wanted to try to insert myself or this bill into this conversation because I think we need a funding source that's actually going to help the local governments kind of fill the gap and fill the needs, and then kind of build the pathway upon those exits to make sure that they are stable. Because if you can't stabilize them, if you only give them the medication within the 30 days that they leave jail, leave the hospital, leave a shelter, then they're just right back on the street. So we have to figure out how do we fund the plan that keeps that medication going long enough for when they get in emergency housing, then move to supportive housing. And the idea was to try to figure out, how can I put some money towards this problem so that if you have a need to try to, get the supportive housing, you have your county money, you have your local money, and now you have this additional 30 million on top, where then you can try to spread it and figure out, okay, maybe this is the, 5 million we need to finally rehab this building to then do the supportive housing. Maybe this is the 3 million we need in order to really make the rehab program that we are already putting dollars in continue to sustain them past a certain point. That's not for me to decide. The idea was to just give some general framework and then figure out how to apply money to the statewide COCs so that they can have that conversation around these particular ideas. Section 3 of the conceptual amendment talks about the Reinvestment Advisory Committee, which is legislation that actually came from last session, which is SB 309. And there's a very unique history to this bill. So SB 309 came after a bill in 2019 that was for, I amended the bill so that they would work together over the next year, year and a half, all the cities and nonprofits, and come together and talk about what do you really, really need to do in order to solve homelessness. Then in 2021, they brought back SB 309, which focused on how do we take the reinvestment dollars that the managed care organizations have in order to, my understanding, go into homelessness services. Now, there's 4 MCOs. Everyone's doing something different. I've talked to 2. I heard, one agency was doing affordable housing. Another, actually Silver Summit met with me, and they're actually doing really, really good stuff with their reinvestment dollars. But the idea that I had in mind when I moved or signed my name to SB 309 was that it was going to go to homelessness services to reduce homelessness. So when I kept hearing, it's being used for affordable housing, I was just like, why? When we need supportive housing, like we actually really need permanent supportive housing. We need to be able to build into emergency housing and try to figure out where do they go after we pick them up from the street. And so this particular piece will probably continue to be massaged because I know everybody has different viewpoints, but the idea was to use that funding source as well on top of the 30 million. It's my understanding, and it might be a little bit more than, at the time when the bill came out, it was about an average of $9 million a year. I think it's a little bit more than that based on what people have told me they're using it for services. But the idea was to take the 30 million, the 22 cents, add the MCO reinvestment dollars to the pie, and then try to figure out how to establish a broader funding that would work towards the end goal, which is another funding source to go into the homelessness solutions. The rest of the bill conceptual amendment talks about in sub 4 that in addition to the portion of the general fund with that carve-out rate of the 22 cents, to try to continue to figure out how to fund stabilizing interventions around emergency, supportive housing, rehab of buildings for supportive housing, and the intent is to use the money in combination with other dollars from the local government. So local governments are already spending money. This is to try to figure out, to add to, not take away from, not for them to pull back, but to say, all right, let's figure out if you got this extra $30 million, if we reimagine the MCO dollars that are reinvested for the next contract period, in order to figure out how to pull that all together to do something different, what then would your ask be? I'm going to skip to sub 6 because I also thought about the federally qualified healthcare centers becoming a part of this model. Why? Because I met some groups that are in northern Nevada that they seem to be, doing a really good job of at least creating a model that has the FQHCs, the shelters, and the local government kind of playing together. And the reason why I thought the federally qualified healthcare center should be a part of this conversation in the South is because they get a higher reimbursement rate. They have a higher rate of reimbursement than just regular Medicaid. And typically what happens in the conversation is, who are the providers to do the work? If you have a higher reimbursement rate for Medicaid, you have a higher chance of getting that provider to come in and help you to build the team and help to figure out how to build that model so that you can't say, well, we don't have providers here, because now you have a partnership with the federally qualified healthcare center who has a higher reimbursement rate to at least give you a pathway to have some providers to build into the process. And I think that's pretty much it. The rest of the bill, I think, is self-explanatory. And generally, the idea was, how do we get some more money? How does the state play into this issue and try to help offset what's going on with homelessness? It's getting out of hand. We need to do something. Whether or not you guys decide to do something this session, we have to do something in order to change the narrative and change the funding around homelessness in the state of Nevada. And with that, I'll open myself up for questions. And then I'll phone a friend.
Thank you so much, Chair Neal. I just have one quick question, actually. I know that with doing tours of facilities that do crisis intervention, et cetera, or some level of degree of care, do they, have you had conversations as to like facility type and reimbursement and how that plays into it? Because I know that, the request I've had is there's some facility types, but because of the facility type that they're under and the requirements of the L2K, that they're not able to get the reimbursement or change some of their beds. So is that something that this would fall under the purview too?
Senator Neal, thank you for the question. No, I have not. I have not had that conversation. What I've been doing is keep sharing iterations of this bill and then going back and forth with the folks that I was seeking the money from.
Great, thank you so much. Any other questions? Senator Spearman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So I just have a couple of quick questions. I know DHHS has a program, a plan, something whenever people exit incarceration, that I think he said it's something like 30 days before, 30 or 60 days before they actually get them set up with Medicaid and SNAP and other things that they will need to survive. So my question is, are any of these groups integrating that option in what they do? When we start talking about how do we follow them, how do we make sure that things are okay with them? That's number one.
Senator Dina Neal, for the record. So it's my understanding that the gap is the actual sustainability upon these exit points, right? How do you sustain them 30, 60, 90 days? That's the gap. So I think that would be better asked to some other folks that are doing it. I just wanted to try to figure out how to figure out a framework and then put money to it. And this bill is still in need of continuing, more amendments or more massaging of the terms. I have had a chance this version has some information in it from Brooke Page, but I still need to figure out if this is actually going to meet the need without giving the power to one entity over another. If that makes sense.
Thank you so much. Senator Buck.
Thank you, Vice Chair Donate. I've worked a lot with NovaMu, which, in order to get released from prison, you have to have somewhere to go. Sponsor, per se, if you have no family. And I know that they provide like wraparound services and that. Another organization, Vegas Stronger, with Dave Marlin and crew. So I know that with the homeless situation, that many of them have issues that are greater than just getting them a house, right? They need, of course, wraparound mental health, addiction help. So how do these organizations or nonprofits get access to these dollars?
Thank you for that, Senator Neal. That would be something that the fiscal work group would have to come up with. I'm not prescribing all of that. The idea was to give some general framework of what would be the overall needs, and then let them work out how they would disperse it, what that application process would be. The idea is, I know one of the things that I think is missing out of this was, and it was a conversation that I had, was making sure that some of the smaller nonprofits could play, because in all of my conversations, I heard that, you know, there's some small nonprofits who do things very, very well, and they don't get a chance to be a part of the model or the team. Typically, the larger nonprofit is allowed to continue to contract. And so it is my intent to put in language in here to allow the smaller nonprofits along the line of needs to be able to do the work, because they have been excluded, is my understanding.
Yeah, if I could put a plug in for Vegas Stronger, I was able to tour that facility, and they take, when jurisdictions call them, they take people off the street, they get them the therapy that they need, and you sort of earn shelter because they want it right then at that point. So it's, I know my husband's in law enforcement, and a lot of times when he goes and speaks to the homeless, or many of them do, they don't want to go to a house or a place. And so, you know, dealing with that is a lot of times getting them the supports that they need with addiction and mental illness, and that putting those steps in place before we just give them a house. So thank you.
Thank you for that. So, I mean, you guys can see the conceptual amendment is still a work in progress. The idea was, I didn't want to lose this BDR, and I didn't want to lose the bill. I wanted to keep working on it, get it out of this committee, and then continue to work with stakeholders to figure out how to refine this bill, to get it to the place where I know for a fact that all of the funding sources are going to be in play and how they will be used. I've spent majority of the time working on what the carve-out was and trying to get folks to a place where it was like, okay, I think I can get behind this particular carve-out. And so I think it's a concept that we need to keep refining, working on, and then try to get an end product that represents trying to reduce homelessness, and the state putting in 22 cents, and then figuring out how to reimagine the reinvestment dollars so that they are actually going towards the homelessness services and maybe grandfathering in some of the MCOs that are already doing some good work in the space, and really just kind of cinching this in. I don't feel like they should be doing affordable housing. We need my expectation on SB 309 in 2021 that it went to homeless services, and that's what I really, really want, and that's what I desire. So,
Senator Spearman, one follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So I agree with you, and the other thing that I'd like to say, it's probably more of a comment, there are a number of smaller 501c3s, community organizations that don't get the notoriety or get noticed, and that became very apparent during COVID, when there were a number of BIPOC communities who needed services, and you had community health workers who were already on the ground doing the service, but they weren't getting any money. And so some of the services that you have elucidated here in this bill, some of those services are being done by some community people, maybe not in large numbers, but by some community people. It may already be in here, but if I could just offer a suggestion, and that is that the fiscal working group has got to do outreach to communities and community organizations, because many times it's the people in the community who already know what is needed, and somebody comes in and tells them, well, you need to do this and that, and they're like, no, we don't, we need this. But the people who come in, they parachute in and they get the money, but the people on the ground are the ones doing the work. So just an observation.
Thank you for that. So the fiscal working group is something that is continuing to be massaged as well. At the end of the day, the short end of this bill, SB 400, I wanted to put money into the homelessness problem, figure out how at least $30 million could work to try to fill some of the gap that's going on within the need to serve these populations. It's not, I mean, it's not a lot of money, but I think it's at least a step in the right direction to try to figure out, how can we max 30 million and then reimagine the reinvestment dollars to do the same, to do an overlay. And with that, I will close my presentation.
Thank you so much. We don't have any other questions, so we'll open up testimony in support of this bill. So if you are in support of Senate Bill 400, please come forward now. And the same in Las Vegas, so if you can please come forward. Ms. Adler, please begin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the committee. Sarah Adler, representing NAMI. And it will be, I have been before you previously recommending identifying the need to create a revenue stream for supportive housing. So NAMI is very excited about this proposal. Many of the homeless are persons suffering from mental illness, addiction, and co-occurring disorders. Our hope is to speak with the sponsor to address the opportunity for supportive housing to also support people who are not homeless but have these chronic disabling conditions. But we are in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Helen Foley for the record, and I am the chairman of the board of First Med, which is a federally qualified health center in southern Nevada. Many of the FQHCs, they all do primary care. They have to have a secondary care. Most of them are dental. Since First Med really relaunched in about 2008, we decided that our primary focus or secondary focus was going to be mental health. Last year, we had 30,000 mental health encounters and 1,500 MAT, which is medication-assisted treatment programs for all of the people who had different types of disorders with substance abuse. We think that this whole idea is very good. We appreciate the senator so much because this is an ugly issue, and it's ugly for all of us, for those that are homeless, for those that are around the homeless, for businesses in the area, and it just keeps getting worse. I mean, we see San Francisco, we see Los Angeles, and so I really admire her for trying to get to the heart of this. Housing is a very important part. Once they have been taken care of in the corridor and then they're let go, where do they go? What do they do? We do an awful lot of wraparound services at First Med, and the great thing, as Senator Neal said, is that we have a higher reimbursement rate from Medicaid. And so HUD awarded us a grant, which we will be receiving in July for $1.8 million over 3 years. And what this does is, for the very first time, HUD has funded a homeless project that prioritizes health care as a chronic condition of homelessness. We will house up to 50 individuals who have chronic mental health issues, physical issues, including the need for MAT, and or all of the above. We work very cooperatively with the Continuum of Care. We've received grants from the City of Las Vegas, and we think there's so much more to do. As Senator Buck and Senator Spearman were talking, there are wonderful organizations on the ground that are already doing work. They could probably utilize some of this money, and we can all work together. So I appreciate what she's doing and pledge that we'll work hand in hand with her.
Thank you, Vice Chair and Committee. Misty Grimmer representing Silver Summit Health Plan. And we definitely appreciate the amendments that the Senator is proposing to this. We did meet with her earlier and sort of walk through the ways that we do have invested the community investment dollars. And so we do appreciate the changes that are being suggested here, which still allow some flexibility and some conversation about how those dollars are spent. We absolutely look forward to being part of this conversation on a long-term basis, not just here at the legislature, but on a long-term basis with the rest of the committee. The way that we have designed our program, it is more of a grant program. So to the point that you made, Senator Spearman, we do actually give a lot of opportunity and have funded some of the smaller organizations, which quite often in other circumstances wouldn't get funding. So we do absolutely appreciate the work that Senator Neal has done and look forward to continuing to work on this bill with her.
Good afternoon, Chair, and for members of the committee. For the record, I'm Mindy Elliott with Flynn Judici Government Affairs, today representing Nevada Housing Coalition, Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority, Nevada Rural Housing Authority, and Reno Housing Authority. And I think from the perspective of, I want to first thank Senator Neal for her amendment on SB 400. And as we work through this holistic approach to the 0 to 30% AMI, the housing authorities and certainly the expertise that they provide, is looking forward to assisting Senator Neal as she brings more context to the bill. The state is changing as it relates to the wraparound services and placing an emphasis on those services that those individuals are needing to keep people housed, to keep people from not being homeless, and more importantly, to help them to improve their futures. That's what this is all about. There's some folks that we recognize that are going to stay at 0 or 30%, and they'll stay in that type of housing, but we're also here to provide training, and we are providing some incredible services, and these nonprofits are providing incredible services to these individuals to help them grow. So with that, we look forward to continuing to work with Senator Neal, and we are excited about this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in Carson City? Anyone in Las Vegas testifying in support? And BPS, anyone virtually?
To testify in support of SB 400, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers willing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to opposition. Anyone that is on opposition, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Nicole Rourke representing the city of Henderson. We just got the amendment this afternoon and really haven't had an opportunity to have much of a conversation about this. Not quite sure how the allocation amount came about and that kind of thing. So we have more questions than we have answers at this point. So we look forward to having that conversation with the sponsor as she moves this forward. Thank you.
Nix County, City of Reno. While support of housing services and affordable housing is incredibly important to us, we do share the same concerns as the City of Henderson. We didn't have much time to look over this, and I'm not sure what it would look like for us, given that we don't have a metropolitan police department. So we'd like to continue working with the sponsor of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in opposition here in Carson City? BPS, is there anyone virtually?
To testify in opposition of SB 400, press star 9 to take your place in the queue now. Chair, there are no callers willing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. And folks in neutral, if you can please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Kelly Crompton representing the city of Las Vegas.
We are in the same boat. We just got the amendment. There was a lot of changes to the funding and how that might work. So we are still looking at this bill and hope to work with the sponsor to talk about this. I'd just like to talk about the dollars that the city of Las Vegas does put in and some of the approaches that we have made as part of the Corridor of Hope sits in the city of Las Vegas in the downtown area. Years ago, we took a regional approach. We took elected members from different bodies of local government, small and large nonprofits, as we looked at approaches that might help bring nonprofits and different wraparound services to these individuals that were experiencing homelessness. The current courtyard that sits in the city of Las Vegas was meant to be a regional, take back from those tours. So a lot of those dollars are going into services like the Recuperative Care Center, like making sure that those people have a place to stay where there are regional barriers or barriers of entry at some of the other nonprofits. So we are very much in support and thank the bill sponsor for looking for a dedicated revenue service to this effort. Again, we see a lot of the individuals experiencing homelessness in our jurisdiction. And so we have been working with her for many years to try to find something. And so we look forward to having conversations with her that will help find a regional approach for this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Donati, and members of the committee. Joanna Jacob, Vice Chair. Clark County Government Affairs Manager. Very pleased to work with Senator Neal on this amendment. We just saw it also right before the meeting. But I wanted to say we appreciate the shared approach on this because Clark County has put significant dollars, our federal dollars, into a stair-step model where we're trying to fund all the points of intervention that we need to do to move people along the stair-step, I guess, towards a sustainable housing placement. It says included we've really invested in capacity building. We tried to do some smaller dollar to try and build up our smaller nonprofits because this is an issue that is also, I wanted to thank you, Senator Spearman and Senator Neal for addressing that issue because it is one that helps us to deliver services. We also were very pleased to work with Senator Neal on SB 309 last session. Clark County worked with her on that bill. I think there's one of the recommendations that Clark County had put in that Medicaid Reinvestment Advisory Committee was for permanent supportive housing, which was the original design. I agree with Senator Neal on the original goal of that bill. So we'll continue to work on it. I think the intent, yes. Thank you, Senator Neal. I can't even speak anymore. It's been a long week. I know. I apologize. I'm trying to be coherent. I think it's original intent of the bill, correct. And so we'll continue to work with. One of the things that we want to work on is the structure of the fiscal committee. I agree with her that we need to reduce the barriers and the bureaucracy, and we're not sure that it fits into the continuum of care. We might have to look at that because it is a HUD prescribed committee, and we don't want to avoid putting more barriers in place for us, but we're going to work with her on this and hope to move something more solidified forward in this process. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cadence Matievich, representing Washoe County. I don't want to belabor the points that you'd heard from other local governments, and I think I'd like to start by thanking Senator Neal. We appreciate any effort that's being made to bring more dollars to the table to address the homeless situations in our communities. In Washoe County on August 30th, 2021, Washoe County, the City of Reno, and City of Sparks entered into an interlocal agreement around how services would be provided to the homeless in our community. We have built the CARES campus, and we are starting to see fantastic results coming out of that. Just reported actually today as a follow-up from a commission meeting earlier this week, that in the second half of 2022, 74% of the people who left the CARES campus were still 6 months later housed. And so we are seeing improvements in those. We appreciate the desire to have a shared approach to providing these services to our shared constituents. We too have some questions about the makeup of this fiscal committee. Don't quite understand, is it a separate fiscal committee for each continuum of care? Is it a single fiscal committee? We heard a lot of discussion around money that would be allocated within Clark County. We don't understand how this translates to the other parts of the state, but very much look forward to being part of those conversations and, like our other local government partners, working to come to a position of support. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Donate and members of the committee. My name is Beth Schmidt. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental Services for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. We are in neutral on SB 400. I want to be very clear, the LVMPD is committed to working in partnership with Clark County and the City of Las Vegas and all stakeholders in Clark County to address homelessness, addiction, and mental health. And Sheriff Kevin McMahill has been very clear from not only when he was running for office, but also when he became sheriff, that these are crises. We need to come together and we need to address them. We do believe as an agency that if all of the stakeholders, we are coming together, we're already meeting, we're talking, we do believe that together we can affect change in Clark County and we can bring much needed help to our most vulnerable citizens. So we are in neutral now, but we appreciate Senator Neal and we appreciate the conversations that we've had with her, and we will continue to work with her on SB 400.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in Carson City? Anyone in Las Vegas? I see someone there. Please begin.
Hello, my name is Susan Proffitt, Proffitt. I'm the Vice President of the Nevada Republican Club. I would like to ditto the police officer's comments. That was the first thing I noticed when I looked at this bill. So I just have a couple of questions because I'd like those clarified before you all sign off on this. We do need to take care of our homeless, and we certainly need to take care of our police, but I don't see what the two have to do with each other, and I don't think that funding our police needs to be run through Health and Human Services and have the Medicaid management involved in that. So I'm just wondering why you would want to do that, and I also am wondering I've noticed a lot of bills are running money through Medicaid this year, and I don't understand why. So I'd like some clarification at some point on why that is and who is overseeing the Medicare people who are managing our money. So with that, I say thank you for bringing this bill, and I hope you can improve it.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in Las Vegas? And BPS, anyone virtually for neutral?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers willing to testify neutral at this time.
All right. Chair Neal, any closing remarks?
Thank you, committee. Okay, imperfect amendment that's in front of you. The metro piece that's there was other language in there because originally the bill had there was a metro property tax override that was set to expire in 2027, and I was going to remove the sunset early and then take 3 cents. However, that's why the metro piece is in there, because there was another funding source attached to that language. And while literally the amendments were moving fast and furious, and it went through the fourth reiteration while I was sitting in Senate caucus and pulling language out. And so my ask for this committee is I want to keep the vehicle open. I want to keep working on this issue, get it out of this committee, and then continue to work on the issue. We know it's going to go to finance because it has a tax on it. Well, it's a carve out of an existing revenue stream that is a tax. And so that's my ask to you guys, is to allow me to move SB 400, continue to work, refine this language, get all the stakeholders in the room, and then work out a structure that's going to make sense, because I really, really, really want to do a funding source in this session on homelessness. All right.
I was trying to take notes for the motion. We'll go ahead and close the hearing on this bill, and we'll turn it over back to Chair Neal.
Yeah. All right, members, I will accept a motion to re-refer to finance without recommendation? And amend, re-refer with an amendment. No, it would be amend and re-refer without a recommendation to finance. So I have a first from Senator Doniate, a second from Senator Spearman. Any discussion on the motion? Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Neal. I'm going to be a yes today with my reservation for the floor, reserving my right for the floor. Of course, we need to solve, and I hope everybody can come together and come up with a great solution. However, I don't want to vote on an additional tax, so I'll wait and see how it comes out in the mix.
Thank you for that. So I want to be clear because I don't think I was clear. It will be general fund. It'll be a carve out. It's just coming from a particular source that I can't mention until I get the final nod on it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to help support getting it out, and I appreciate your work on this. So thank you.
Thank you for that. So all in favor of the amend and re-refer to finance without recommendation, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing no opposition, this will be amended and re-referred to finance so I can continue to work on this with the stakeholders. Thank you, committee. And with that, we will open up for public comment. Is there anyone here in Carson City in public comment? Is there anyone in Las Vegas public comment? Is there anyone on the phone lines for public comment?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers willing to provide public comment.
Okay, Senate revenue is adjourned.